I arrived at Black Spruce Ranger Station on the first Tuesday of October, 2 days after my student loan servicer sent the final delinquency notice. The job posting had been vague. Seasonal overnight ranger, Black Spruce Wilderness Area, Northern Montana, 6-month contract, housing provided, self-sufficient candidates only. But the pay was enough to halt wage garnishment and cover the back rent on my sister's apartment. That was all I needed. The hiring supervisor, named only as Mr. Vale in the emails, never called. Instructions came in clipped PDFs attached to automated replies. Drive to mile marker 214 on Route 78. Park on the gravel shoulder. Walk 200 yards east along the old service trail until you see the red-roofed cabin. Do not deviate from the trail. Do not stop to look behind you. Do not greet anyone you meet on the path. I didn't meet anyone. The trail was overgrown, edged with brittle stalks of goldenrod and low juniper. My pack weighed 38 pounds, 2 weeks of dehydrated meals, a sleeping bag rated for -15, a handheld Garmin with preloaded topo maps, and the Ranger-issued radio, Channel 6 only, charged to 98%. I'd checked it 3 times before leaving my truck. Black Spruce Ranger Station was smaller than I expected. 1 story, cedar shingled, with a metal roof that had rusted at the seams. A single window on the east face, one on the west, both smeared with decades of grime. The front door had a deadbolt and a Yale padlock on the outside, which seemed backward until I saw the note taped beneath the knob. New hire. Use key number 3 from the lockbox under the porch step. Turn clockwise twice, then counterclockwise once. Do not open the door until you've verified the window seals are intact from outside. Do not enter if any seal is broken. Beneath it, a rusted lockbox. Inside, 12 keys on a steel ring, each labeled with a grease pencil. Key number 3 matched the deadbolt. I circled the cabin first, as instructed. The east window had 3 strips of black duct tape forming a cross over the glass, still adhered, edges crisp. The west window had the same. No cracks, no smudges beyond what wind and dust would leave. I counted the tape strips twice, 3 per window. That felt deliberate. I unlocked the door. The interior smelled of pine resin, dry rot, and something faintly metallic, like old pennies left in rain. 1 room, cot in the corner, wood stove, metal desk bolted to the floor, wall-mounted supply cabinet, and a wall phone with no dial, only a single green button. Mounted above the desk was a clipboard with a laminated sheet. I read it standing, boots still on. 1. You are alone. No partner will be assigned. No visitors permitted. If someone claims to be park service, ask for their employee number and verify via radio with dispatch, Channel 6, before acknowledging them further. Do not let them inside under any circumstance. 2. Windows must remain sealed with 3 full-length strips of black tape at all times during daylight hours. After sunset, remove the tape from the west window only. Replace it before sunrise. The east window stays sealed 24 hours. 3. Between 11 p.m. and 4 a.m., do not look out any window. Do not respond to knocks, calls, or radio chatter that uses your first name. The only acceptable response is, Ranger Station Black Spruce, go ahead. Repeat this phrase exactly. 4. The basement door is locked with a brass padlock. Key number 7. Do not open it. Do not attempt to look through the keyhole. If you hear sounds from below, cover your ears and count to 300 slowly. Do not move from your chair until the count is complete. 5. The service corridor behind the wood stove leads to the exterior pump and outhouse. Use it only between 6 a.m. and 8 p.m. At no time after 8 p.m. should you step beyond the threshold of that corridor. If you must relieve yourself after hours, use the bucket under the cot. 6. Every night at precisely 10:55 p.m., perform a full inventory of the supply cabinet. Note any discrepancies on the log sheet. Missing items must be reported to dispatch by 11 p.m. exactly. No exceptions. 7. Do not accept food, water, or tools from anyone, even if they appear to be a fellow ranger. All supplies are pre-stocked. If something is missing, it was never there. 8. Animals seen at night moving in straight lines, backward, or without blinking are not animals. Do not track them. Do not speak their species name aloud. 9. Between 2:10 a.m. and 2:20 a.m., cover the west window with a white sheet nailed to the frame. After 2:20 a.m., remove the sheet and leave the window bare until sunrise. Failure to comply voids all other protections. 10. If you see your own reflection in any surface between midnight and 4 a.m., close your eyes and say, "Not me." Do this 3 times. Do not open your eyes until the phrase is complete. 11. The radio must be checked every hour on the hour. If static lasts longer than 17 seconds, switch to channel 6 emergency frequency and repeat your call sign 3 times. Do not acknowledge any voice that answers unless it uses yesterday's code word. 12. Do not write in the logbook after midnight. Ink attracts attention. 13. If footsteps circle the cabin, count them. If the number exceeds 200, light 1 emergency flare and place it in the stove. Do not look outside while it burns. 14. You are not responsible for what was here before you. Do not read prior logs. Do not question why the last ranger left. I stood there for a long time. My hands didn't shake. That surprised me. I'd expected panic. Instead, I felt a dull, grinding focus. The same way I'd felt during finals week in grad school, when I'd pulled 3 all-nighters in a row to finish a thesis I no longer cared about. This was just another system, another set of rules to follow. I dropped my pack by the door, locked it from the inside, and began the inventory. The supply cabinet held 12 rolls of black duct tape, each unopened, sealed in plastic. 1 hammer, 50 nails, count verified, 3 white cotton sheets, stored flat, edges aligned, 4 emergency flares, expiration date 2024, 2 gallons of distilled water, 12 D-cell batteries, 1 box of Strike Anywhere matches, 1 first aid kit, sealed, and 1 metal tin labeled, "Salt, do not open unless directed." I noted everything on the log sheet. Everything matched. At 6:45 p.m., I ate a rehydrated beef stew packet and checked the radio. Static for 3 seconds, then a voice. "Black Spruce, this is dispatch. Confirm receipt." I pressed the talk button. "Ranger Station Black Spruce, go ahead." The voice repeated my call sign, then gave the day's code word. Juniper. I wrote it down. Tomorrow's code would be something else. Yesterday's had been cedar. I remembered that. Night fell fast in the mountains. By 8 p.m., the light was gone. I removed the tape from the west window as instructed, folding each strip carefully and placing them in a labeled envelope on the desk. The glass was cold to the touch. Outside, the trees stood like sentinels, black against a sky dusted with stars I didn't recognize. I'd worked in Glacier and Yellowstone before, knew the constellations. These were wrong. Too many. Too bright. I didn't look long. At 10:55 p.m., I did the inventory again, all items present. At 11 p.m., I radioed dispatch. Inventory complete, no discrepancies. The dispatcher said, "Copy that, Black Spruce. Maintain protocol." Their voice was flat, genderless, and slightly delayed, as if routed through an old satellite. I sat on the cot, boots off, back against the wall. The wood stove was cold. I didn't light it. The instructions didn't mention heating, and I didn't want to risk smoke or noise. At 12:03 a.m., I heard the first footsteps. They began at the north corner of the cabin, slow, deliberate, crunching on dry pine needles, 1 step every 5 seconds. I counted them under my breath. 1, 2, 3. They circled clockwise, never speeding up, never pausing. When they reached the south side, I could hear the shift of weight, the slight drag of a heel. At 147 steps, they stopped. Silence. I waited. 3 minutes passed, then 5. I didn't move, didn't breathe too loudly. At 1:12 a.m., the footsteps started again, but this time they were inside the service corridor. I froze. The corridor was just behind the wood stove, a narrow passage with a metal door leading outside. According to Rule 5, I wasn't supposed to be back there after 8 p.m., but someone, or something, was. I didn't turn, didn't look. I stared straight ahead at the east window, its tape-sealed glass reflecting the dim beam of my headlamp. The footsteps stopped at the threshold of the corridor, right behind the stove. A knock, 3 raps, evenly spaced, then a voice. "Eli, you in there?" It was my sister's voice, clear, terrified. "Eli, please, the door's locked, I can't get in." My chest tightened. My sister lived in Boise. She hadn't spoken to me in 11 months, not since I'd borrowed $600 and never paid it back. She called me Ellis, never Eli. This wasn't her. I kept my eyes on the window, my mouth dry. I whispered the required phrase, "Ranger Station Black Spruce, go ahead." Silence, then softer. "You don't recognize me? It's Mia. I drove all night. There's something in the woods." I repeated it louder. Ranger Station Black Spruce, go ahead. A sigh, then footsteps retreating down the corridor, out the metal door, back into the dark. I didn't move for 23 minutes, checked my watch constantly, counted my breaths. At 1:40 a.m., I stood, walked to the desk, and wrote in the log, footsteps, approx, 150 total. Voice mimicry attempted, no breach. I didn't sleep. At 2:10 a.m., I nailed the white sheet over the west window. The hammer felt heavy in my hand. Each nail took 3 strikes to seat. I counted them, 12 nails, 3 per corner. The sheet hung taut, blocking all light. At 2:20 a.m., I pulled it down. The glass was fogged with condensation. I wiped it with my sleeve. Outside, nothing moved. Dawn came gray and damp. Mist clung to the ground, rising like breath. I checked the perimeter. No tracks near the cabin, no broken branches. The service corridor door was closed, padlock intact. I ate breakfast in silence. At 7 a.m., I radioed dispatch for the daily code word, hemlock. I wrote it down next to juniper. That afternoon, I found the First Amendment taped to the inside of the supply cabinet door. The paper was yellowed, the ink faded but legible. Amendment 1. If a voice uses a name you recognize, do not repeat the standard phrase more than twice. On the 3rd attempt, say nothing. Silence is safer. Amendment 2. After any mimicry event, reseal all window tape with fresh strips, even if the originals appear intact. Old tape loses adhesion. Amendment 3. The bucket under the cot must be emptied only at sunrise. Do not look inside while emptying. Amendment 4. If you hear crying that sounds like a child, plug your ears and hum the national anthem. Do not count the cries. Do not try to locate the source. Amendment 5. Between 3:15 a.m. and 3:25 a.m., stand in the center of the room with your back to the east wall. Do not move. Do not close your eyes. Amendment 6. Never refer to the entity as it. Never give it a name. Refer only to the disturbance or the event. I read it 3 times. Then I took a new roll of tape and resealed both windows, even though the sun was high. That night, at 11:32 p.m., the radio crackled. Black Spruce, this is Ranger Hayes. I'm 10 clicks west on the Ridge Trail. My GPS is down. Can you send coordinates? Hayes was a name I knew. A real ranger. Worked out of Glacier. I'd met him once at a training seminar. He had a mole on his left cheek and always wore a brown Carhartt jacket with a missing button. But we weren't supposed to have partners, and Rule 1 said no visitors. I keyed the mic. Ranger Station Black Spruce, go ahead. Ellis, that you? Shit, man, I'm freezing out here. Just need your grid ref. He used my real name. I didn't respond. Static hissed for 21 seconds. Then, fine, be that way. The radio went dead. I didn't sleep. Sat with my back to the east wall from 3:15 to 3:25 as Amendment 5 required. My neck ached, my eyes burned, but I didn't move. At 4 a.m., I heard a new sound, a low, wet dragging, like something heavy being pulled through mud. It came from the direction of the basement door. I covered my ears and counted to 300. 300 seconds, 5 minutes. The sound didn't stop until 298. The next day, I found a dead crow on the porch. Its wings were folded neatly against its body, but its head was twisted completely backward, beak pointing at its tail. I didn't touch it, didn't name it. I just noted in the log, avian disturbance, head orientation reversed. I left it there. At noon, I did a full perimeter check. 50 yards out in all directions. No other bodies, no footprints. The crow was the only anomaly. But when I returned to the cabin, the east window's tape was peeling at the top corner. I hadn't touched it. I tore it down, used fresh tape, counted the strips, 3, and pressed them smooth. My hands shook this time. That evening, I emptied the bucket at sunrise as instructed. I didn't look inside, but as I poured the contents into the pit behind the outhouse, I caught a glimpse of something dark floating in the liquid. Not urine. Thicker. Glistening. I walked away fast. The 3rd night, the footsteps returned. 212 this time. I lit a flare and dropped it into the stove. The magnesium burned white hot, filling the cabin with acrid smoke. I kept my eyes closed until it died. In the morning, the stove was cold. The flare casing was gone. Not ash, not residue, just absent. I reported it to dispatch. They said, "Noted, continue protocol." I didn't ask questions. By the end of the first week, I'd memorized the rules, revised them in my head, added silent annotations. Tape must be applied left to right, never right to left. Nails must be driven with the grain of the wood, never across. When counting footsteps, start on the north corner, never the south. I stopped sleeping in the cot, slept on the floor, back against the east wall facing the door. My rifle, issued but unloaded per Park Service policy, lay across my chest like a shield. On the 8th night, it snowed, light, dry flakes that hissed when they hit the metal roof. At 10 p.m., I checked the supply cabinet. Everything was there, except one roll of tape. I stared at the shelf, counted the rolls. 11. There should have been 12. I checked the log. Previous entry, all supplies present. I radioed dispatch at 11 p.m. exactly. Inventory discrepancy, one roll of black tape missing. Static. Then, copy that black spruce. Tape is not missing. It was never there. I wrote that down. But I knew. I'd counted it myself on day 1. 12 rolls. At midnight, the radio came alive again. Ellis, please, I'm so cold. Mia's voice. Closer this time. Right outside the west window. I didn't answer, didn't move. The voice sobbed. You left me with the landlord. You stole from me, and now you won't even look? A hand pressed against the glass, pale, fingers splayed. I kept my eyes on the east wall. Look at me, she whispered, just once. I said nothing. The hand slid down the glass, left a smear. At 1:06 a.m., the handprint was gone. The next morning, I found the Second Amendment sheet tucked into the logbook. Amendment 7. If a handprint appears on any window, do not clean it. It will vanish on its own. Cleaning it invites return. Amendment 8. Do not verify missing items more than once. Accept dispatch's word. Doubt is a vector. Amendment 9. If snow falls at night, do not go outside until noon. The snow does not record true tracks. Amendment 10. Never say I'm alone. The phrase is a signal. I read it and burned the old log pages up to that point in the stove, only kept the current weak. That afternoon, I saw a deer in the clearing 50 yards east of the cabin. It stood perfectly still. Then it took one step backward, then another. Its eyes never blinked. I went inside and locked the door. At 2:10 a.m., I nailed up the white sheet. My hands were steady now, automatic. The routine was my armor, but armor cracks. On the 12th night, the storm hit. Not snow. Rain. Cold. Driving rain that turned the ground to sludge. The wind howled through the trees like a thing in pain. At 9 p.m., the radio died. Not static. Complete silence. No carrier wave. Dead air. I tried channel 6 emergency frequency. Nothing. I checked the batteries. Fresh. 98%. At 10 p.m., the lights went out. Not that there were many. Just a single bulb over the desk, powered by a small solar array on the roof. The array must have shorted in the rain. I lit a kerosene lamp. The flame flickered wildly. At 10:55, I did the inventory by lamplight. All items present. Even the missing roll of tape was back on the shelf. 12 rolls. I didn't question it. Amendment 8. At 11 p.m., I couldn't radio dispatch. At 11:12, the knocking started. Not on the door, on the west window. 3 raps, then 3 more. Then a voice. Ranger Hayes, Park Service, emergency override, open up. I knew that voice, knew the cadence, knew the slight rasp from years of chain smoking. But I also knew Hayes had died 2 years ago. Car accident on Highway 2. I'd read the obituary. I didn't answer. The knocking grew louder, faster, then stopped. Silence for 12 seconds, then the voice again, lower. Ellis. You remember Glacier, that night at the staff cabin? You said you'd never tell. I hadn't told. But that night had never happened. I'd been alone in my bunk. The lamp flickered. The flame dipped low. I backed into the corner by the east wall, pulled my knees to my chest. At 11:40, the footsteps began, not circling, coming straight for the door. 1, 2, 3, heavy, dragging. They stopped 6 feet from the threshold. A long pause, then a whisper through the keyhole. Open, it's me. I covered my ears, counted to 300. But halfway through, I heard another sound. From the basement, a low hum, like a generator, or a swarm. I finished the count, stood, walked to the desk, lit a flare, dropped it in the stove. The light flared bright, casting monstrous shadows. In that light, I saw something on the west window. Not a handprint. Words, scratched into the glass, deep enough to catch the light. Let me in. I know your name. I turned away fast. The flare burned for 90 seconds, then died. Darkness. At 12:01 a.m., the radio crackled. Not channel 6. A new frequency. Clear. Strong. Black Spruce Ranger Station. This is prior occupant log, Boss 884. If you're hearing this, the storm has breached the static layer. Follow emergency protocols immediately. I grabbed the radio. My voice cracked. Go ahead. Emergency Protocol 1. Seal all windows with 6 strips of tape, double the usual. Use nails if necessary. Do not leave any gap larger than a fingernail. Emergency Protocol 2. Place one flare in each corner of the room. Do not light them. Their presence alone provides shielding. Emergency Protocol 3. Between midnight and 4 a.m., you must walk the perimeter inside the cabin, 12 laps, no more, no less. Walk counterclockwise. If you see your own shadow moving independently, stop, face the east wall, and recite, "This is not mine." Do not resume walking until the shadow stills. Emergency Protocol 4. Do not sleep. Do not sit. Do not lean against any wall for more than 40 seconds. Emergency Protocol 5. If the voice returns and uses your full name, respond with "verification pending." Then immediately begin your perimeter walk. The transmission ended. I didn't hesitate. I tore open 2 rolls of tape, applied 6 strips to each window, overlapping, pressing hard. Used 8 nails on the west frame to secure the edges. My fingers bled, but I didn't stop. I placed the 4 flares in the corners, northwest, northeast, southwest, southeast. At 12:07 a.m., I began walking, counterclockwise, heel to toe, 1 lap, 2. The cabin was 20 feet by 15. Each lap was 70 feet, 12 laps, 840 feet. I counted every step. At lap 3, the lamp went out. I walked in total darkness. At lap 5, I heard breathing behind me. Not mimicry, real breath, wet, close. I didn't turn, didn't speed up, just kept walking. At lap 7, I saw my shadow on the east wall. It was facing me. I stopped, faced the wall, said, "This is not mine." 3 times. The shadow turned away. I resumed walking. At lap 9, the voice came again. Ellis James Carter. My full name, never used, not even on my resume. I stopped, said, "Verification pending," then kept walking. At lap 11, the basement door rattled. The brass padlock clicked. Not opened, just clicked. I finished lap 12 at 3:58 a.m., collapsed against the east wall, 40 seconds exactly, then slid to the floor. The rain had stopped. At 4 a.m., the first gray light seeped through the west window. I checked the windows, tape intact, flares undisturbed. I counted the supply cabinet inventory, all items present. I wrote in the log, "Storm event, emergency protocols enacted, 12 laps completed, shadow anomaly observed, basement lock triggered but held." I didn't mention the name. Didn't write Ellis James Carter. Ink attracts attention. That morning, I found prior occupant log, rate 84, tucked into the salt tin. It was a single page, handwritten in blue ink. They got Riley on his 3rd night. He opened the door for his dog, said it was whining. It wasn't his dog. It had no eyes, just black pits. Riley's gone. Not dead. Gone, like erased. I lasted 22 nights. Broke Rule 13, counted 201 footsteps, lit the flare. But I looked, just for a second, saw something standing in the trees, taller than a man, no face, just angles. It followed me inside, not through the door, through the walls, like the cabin was made of smoke. I'm writing this in the basement. It's quieter down here. The humming helps. If you find this, don't read it after midnight. And for God's sake, don't go down here. JM, I burned the page in the stove. That afternoon, I did a full perimeter check, 100 yards out. In the mud near the tree line, I found a boot print, size 10, Ranger issue, my size, but pointing toward the cabin. Not away. I didn't report it. At 2:10 a.m. the next night, I nailed up the white sheet. My movements were precise, robotic. The rhythm was all I had. On the 16th night, dispatch sent a supply drop. A drone, small, silent, landed on the porch at noon. It carried 2 new rolls of tape, 4 flares, and a fresh logbook. No note. I brought it inside, checked every item, verified expiration dates. At 2 p.m., I heard a child crying. Not outside, inside the service corridor, high-pitched, terrified. Amendment 4, plug ears, hum anthem. I did. Stood in the center of the room, eyes closed, humming the Star-Spangled Banner, off-key. The crying stopped at the second rocket's red glare. I didn't go to the corridor. At 10 p.m., I found a new amendment taped to the radio. Amendment 11, if the crying occurs inside the cabin, do not hum the anthem. Stand motionless and count ceiling beams until it stops. There are 7 beams, count them 3 times. I looked up. 7 beams. I counted them 3 times. The next night, the footsteps returned. 231. I lit a flare, placed it in the stove, didn't look. In the morning, the flare was gone, but so was one of the white sheets. I didn't report it. I just added a new rule to my mental list. Never store sheets flat. Fold them diagonally. On the 23rd night, the radio worked again. Black Spruce, this is dispatch. Your rotation ends in 7 days. Prepare for handover. I said, "Copy that. Next ranger arrives October 31st. Be ready at noon. Do not leave before then." "Copy that." I didn't ask who was coming. I spent the next week preparing. I restocked the tape, replaced the flares, wrote a new logbook, clean, concise, only facts. I typed out the core rules, amendments, and emergency protocols on waterproof paper, added my own notes in the margins. Tape must be applied during daylight, never at night. Flares must be placed before midnight, after invites mimicry. If the salt tin is warm, do not open it. I left the prior occupant's log out of it. Some things shouldn't be passed down. On the morning of October 31st, I did a final inventory. All items present. I walked the perimeter one last time, 100 yards out. The boot print was gone. At 11 a.m., I sealed both windows with fresh tape, 6 strips each, as per storm protocol, even though the sky was clear. At 11:30, I placed the 4 flares in the corners. At 11:45, I stood in the center of the room, back to the east wall. At noon, a figure appeared on the trail. Young, early 20s, backpack, nervous stance. I watched through the west window, didn't open the door. They stopped 20 yards from the porch, looked up at the cabin. I picked up the radio, keyed the mic. "Ranger Station Black Spruce, go ahead." The figure jumped, then raised a hand. Not a greeting, a signal. They pulled a laminated sheet from their pocket, held it up. I read it through the glass. "Applicant for Black Spruce Ranger Station. Name T. Reyes. Employee number 7742B. I radioed dispatch. Verify employee 7742B. Static. Then verified. Proceed with handover." I unlocked the door, stepped onto the porch, didn't go farther. T. Reyes approached, stopped 5 feet away, didn't offer a handshake. "Here," I said, handing over the waterproof packet. "Read it before you enter. Every word." They nodded, took it. "Do not read it after midnight," I added. "I won't," they said. I turned and walked back inside, locked the door behind me. From the window, I watched them sit on a stump and read. At 12:07 p.m., they stood, looked at the cabin, then at the tree line, then back at the cabin. I didn't wave. I just stood there, back to the east wall, until they turned and walked down the trail. I waited an hour, then 2. At 3 p.m., I began packing my gear. I left everything issued. Radio, cot, stove, cabinet. Took only my clothes, my rifle, and the logbook. Before I left, I checked the basement door. The brass padlock was warm to the touch. I didn't open it. I walked the trail back to my truck. Didn't look behind me. Didn't stop. At the highway, I called my sister. She answered on the 3rd ring. "Ellis?" "Yeah," I said. "It's me." I didn't tell her about the job. Didn't say where I'd been. We talked about rent, about her new job, about nothing that mattered. When I hung up, I drove east. 3 days later, I got a letter. No return address, just a Park Service logo. Inside, a single line. "Inventory audit complete. All items accounted for, except 1 white sheet." I burned the letter. Now, when I sleep, I face the east wall. I count ceiling beams in every room I stay in. And if I hear footsteps, I don't count them. I just wait, because I know the rules. And the rules keep you safe, as long as you never ever stop following them. Even after you leave. Especially after you leave, I keep a roll of black tape in my glove compartment, just in case. And every night at 2:10 a.m., no matter where I am, I cover the nearest window with a white sheet. I don't know why. I just do, because someone has to. And if I don't, who will? The first week back in Missoula, I rented a studio above a hardware store on Higgins Avenue. The window faced west. I bought blackout curtains, but they weren't enough. On the 3rd night, I heard scratching. Not outside, inside the wall, like fingernails on drywall. I didn't investigate. Instead, I nailed a white sheet over the window at 2:10 a.m. I'd bought a small hammer from the store below, $10, steel handle, ash wood grip. I used finishing nails, 20 per sheet, driven in a diamond pattern. My landlord left a note taped to my door the next morning. "Please do not damage property. This is a violation of lease." I removed the nails at 2:20 a.m. exactly, folded the sheet, stored it in a Ziploc bag under my bed. That night, the scratching returned, louder. I covered my ears and counted ceiling beams. There were only 5. I counted them 6 times. At 3:15 a.m., I stood in the center of the room until 3:25. My back ached, my eyes itched. I didn't sleep. The next day, I called in sick to my temp job at the courier warehouse. They didn't ask questions. I'd been reliable, quiet, never late. I spent the day walking, not aimlessly. I mapped the city like it was wilderness. I measured distances between streetlights, on average, 32 yards. I timed how long it took pigeons to cross intersections. Normal birds took 4 to 6 seconds. Twice, I saw one land, turn completely around, then take off in the opposite direction without flapping. I didn't name it. I just noted the time, 1:14 p.m. and 4:03 p.m. Back in my room, I rechecked my inventory. Glove compartment, 1 roll black tape, unused, flare, unlit, salt tin, unopened. Backpack, 12 D-cells, matches, water bottle, full. I kept the radio, even though it only worked on channel 6. I checked it every hour. Static, always static. But on the 7th night, it spoke. Black Spruce, relay status. Same dispatcher voice, same delay. I keyed the mic. Ranger Station Black Spruce, go ahead. Silence. Then, T. Reyes failed inventory, missing salt tin. Last transmission, it's in the walls. I didn't respond. The radio went dead. I didn't write it down. Ink attracts attention. But I remembered. The next morning, I drove back toward Route 78. Not all the way, just to mile marker 200. I parked, sat with the engine off. The mountains loomed, blue in the distance. I didn't go farther. But that night, I dreamed of the basement. Not entering, just standing outside the door. The brass padlock was gone. The door stood ajar. Inside, the humming was louder. And beneath it, a voice I almost recognized said, "Ellis, you forgot to count the beams." I woke at 3:58 a.m., immediately stood, faced east, counted the beams 3 times. There were still 5, but one had a hairline crack running down its center. I didn't touch it. I just covered it with a strip of black tape the next day, applied left to right. After that, I started carrying salt. Not from the tin, regular iodized, from the grocery store. I kept a small pouch in my jacket pocket. I never opened it, but I weighed it every morning, 2.3 ounces. If it dropped below 2, I'd refill it. It never did. On the first snowfall of November, I received another letter. No envelope, just left on my doormat. Inside, a photocopy of a log entry, mine, but not. Night 27, footsteps, 199, safe. But the crow returned, head forward this time, eyes open. It watched me through the west window all night. I didn't cover the sheet on time. Mistake. It wasn't my handwriting, and I'd never written about a crow returning. I burned it in the sink. That evening, I checked my truck's glove compartment. The salt tin was warm. I didn't open it. Instead, I drove to a campground 30 miles east, paid cash for a one-night stay in cabin 7. The cabin had 2 windows, east and west. At 2:10 a.m., I nailed up a sheet on the west one. The manager knocked at 10 p.m. "Sir, guests are complaining about the noise. Said you've been pacing." "I'm fine," I said through the door. He left. I finished my 12th lap at 3:58. The next morning, cabin 7 was condemned. Sign on the door, structural instability, do not enter. I didn't look back. By December, I'd moved 3 times. Each apartment, each room. I checked the beams, counted windows, measured distances to the nearest tree. I kept my radio charged. I followed the rules, even when no one was watching. Especially then, because the rules aren't for the place. They're for you. And if you stop even for a night, it notices. On Christmas Eve, I got a call from dispatch. Not on the radio, on my cell. The number was blocked. I let it go to voicemail. It said only, "T. Reyes is gone. Salt tin found empty. Basement door open. Your name was on the wall." I deleted it. That night, I didn't sleep. I stood in the center of my room from 3:15 to 3:25. I counted beams. I faced east, and at 2:10 a.m., I covered my window, because someone has to. And if I don't, who will? In early January, I took a job at a forestry supply depot outside Kalispell. Night shift, stocking shelves, minimal human contact. The warehouse had no windows on the north or west sides, only east and south-facing loading bays with reinforced glass. I requested the east-facing break room. They said yes. I brought my own hammer. At 2:10 a.m., I'd slip out during my break, climb the exterior ladder, and nail a white sheet over the east window from the outside. 20 nails. Diamond pattern. I'd remove it at 2:20, fold it, and store it in a vacuum-sealed bag inside my locker. No one noticed, or if they did, they didn't say. But on the 3rd Thursday, my supervisor found me standing in the center of the break room at 3:17 a.m. He didn't say anything at first, just watched. Then, "You okay, Carter?" "I'm fine," I said, "just checking the beams." He frowned, looked up. "There's only 4. "I know," I said. He left. The next day, HR called me in. "We've had concerns," the woman said, "about your sleep schedule, your rituals." "I follow safety protocols," I said. She slid a paper across the desk, voluntary leave of absence, paid for 2 weeks. I signed it. That night, I drove to Glacier National Park's east entrance, not to work, just to look. I parked at St. Mary Lake, sat on the hood of my truck. The moon was full, the water was black glass. At 11 p.m., I heard footsteps on the trail behind me. Not mine. I didn't turn. I just counted them in my head. 1, 2, 3. They circled my truck. 189 steps. Then stopped. Silence. I stayed until 4 a.m. Then drove to a motel in Essex. Room 12, ground floor, 1 window. At 2:10 a.m., I covered it. The next morning, I found a new amendment slipped under my door. No envelope, no stamp, just a typed sheet. Amendment 12. If you are followed after leaving the station, do not acknowledge it. Do not count the steps. Do not look in mirrors for 72 hours. Sleep facing east. Keep salt within arm's reach. Amendment 13. The salt tin may be opened only if you hear humming through 3 solid walls. Pour 1 handful onto the floor in a circle around your sleeping area. Do not step out of the circle until sunrise. Amendment 14. If your name appears written anywhere, walls, paper, glass, burn the object immediately. Do not read it aloud. Do not photograph it. Amendment 15. Never return to Black Spruce. The path remembers. I folded the paper and placed it in my salt tin. That afternoon, I bought a new radio. Same model, same frequency. Channel 6. At 7 p.m., I turned it on. Static. At 7:05, it spoke. Alice, come home. Not Mia. Not Hayes. A voice I'd never heard before. Deep, smooth, familiar in the way a toothache is familiar. I switched it off. But the voice continued. Not from the radio, from the wall behind the bed. Your rules are good, it said, but incomplete. I stood, faced east, covered my ears, counted beams. 3 times. The voice didn't stop. It just waited. I left the motel at dawn, drove north until I hit the Canadian border. Didn't cross, just parked and watched the sunrise. At 2:10 a.m., I covered the truck's rear window with a sheet I'd kept in the back seat. A customs officer drove by in a white SUV, slowed, looked, didn't stop. I stayed until noon, then turned south. A February brought ice storms. I was living in a converted shed behind a friend's house in Helena. No official tenancy, no lease, just a cot, a space heater, and a battery-powered radio. The shed had 1 window, south-facing. At 2:10 a.m., I nailed the sheet, but the wind tore it loose by 2:15. I re-nailed it. It tore again. By 2:18, I was out of nails. I used duct tape instead, 6 strips, as per Emergency Protocol 1. But it wasn't the same. At midnight, the humming started. Not from below, from inside the walls of the shed. I sat in the center, counted beams. Only 2. I counted them 10 times. At 3:15, I stood, faced east. At 3:25, I sat. At 4 a.m., the salt tin was hot. Too hot to touch. I didn't open it. Instead, I walked to the main house, knocked. My friend answered, half asleep. Ellis, you okay? I need to borrow your truck, I said. Now? Yes. He handed me the keys. I drove to a 24-hour hardware store, bought 50 finishing nails, a new hammer, 3 white cotton sheets, a bag of rock salt. Back at the shed, I re-nailed the sheet, double thickness, 40 nails. Then I poured a circle of salt around my cot. I didn't sleep in it. I sat outside, back against the east wall of the shed, rifle across my lap, until sunrise. The humming stopped at 5:42 a.m. The next day, I found a deer skull on the porch. No flesh, just bone. But the jaw was wired shut with copper wire, and the eye sockets were filled with black soil. I didn't touch it. I just wrote in my log, faunal offering, jawbound, soil in orbits. Then I buried it 50 yards east, as far as I dared. In March, I got a job at a remote weather station near the Bob Marshall Wilderness. 6 weeks, isolated, no visitors, perfect. The station was newer, solar panels, satellite uplink, double-paned windows. I requested the night shift. They agreed. On my first night, I checked the windows. East, sealed. West, bare. At 10:55, I did the inventory. All supplies present. At 11, I radioed base. Station Echo 7. This is Carter. Inventory complete. Copy that, said the dispatcher. Code word for tonight, Aspen. I wrote it down. At 12:02 a.m., I heard footsteps. Circling. 193. Safe. At 1 a.m., the radio crackled. Echo 7. We see you're using Black Spruce protocols. I froze. How do you know that? I asked. Silence. Then, because we lost someone there too. I didn't respond. At 2:10 a.m., I covered the west window. The station manager found me nailing it the next morning. You don't need to do that, he said. This place is secure. I know, I said, but I like the light blocked. He shrugged. But that night, he disabled the external motion sensors. At midnight, the footsteps came closer, 198. Then a voice. Ellis, they told me you'd be here. I didn't answer. I just stood in the center of the room until 3:25. The next day I quit. By April, I'd stopped looking for work. I lived off savings, odd jobs for cash, fixing fences, clearing brush, hauling firewood. I kept my routines. Every night I faced east. Every morning I checked my salt. One morning, the pouch was empty, not spilled, just gone. I bought a new one. That night I dreamed of T. Reyes. They were standing in the service corridor, back to the basement door. Their jacket was wrong, too dark, no park service patch. They turned. Their eyes were black, not pupils, entirely black. They mouthed, "It's waiting for you to forget." I woke at 3:58, stood, faced east, counted beams, 6 this time. I didn't question it. I just added a new rule. Always count beams before sleeping. If the number changes, reseal all windows immediately. On May 1st, I received a package. No return address, postmarked from Whitefish. Inside, a new logbook. Blank, except the first page. Handwritten in blue ink. "You did well, better than most. But the rules aren't enough anymore. It's learned. It watches. It waits for you to slip. So I'm sending you what I should have had. JM." Beneath it, a key. Brass, small. Key, number 7. The basement key. I didn't touch it. I sealed the package in a plastic bag and buried it under a granite outcrop 20 miles from Black Spruce. But that night, I checked my glove compartment. The original key number 7 was gone. In its place, the new one. Warm. The final incident happened in June. I was renting a room above a laundromat in Great Falls. Concrete walls, no windows in the bedroom, just a door to a shared hallway. I thought I was safe. At 2:10 a.m., I couldn't cover a window, so I covered the door, nailed a sheet over it. My roommate knocked at 2:30. "Dude, what the hell?" "I'm fine," I said. He called the landlord. They threatened eviction. I moved out that night, stayed in my truck. At 3 a.m., I heard humming, not from the ground, from the engine. I got out, walked 50 yards east, sat on a curb, faced east, counted stars. But the constellations were wrong again. Too many, too bright, like that first night at Black Spruce. I didn't look long. I just whispered, "Not me," 3 times. Then I got back in the truck, drove east until the sun rose. Now it's August. I'm staying in a cabin near the Canadian border. Not Black Spruce, but similar. 1 room, east and west windows. I follow the rules. I teach them to myself every night. I've added to them Amendment 16. If you dream of the basement, burn 1 match upon waking. Do not extinguish it. Let it burn to the filter. Amendment 17. Never use digital clocks, only analog. Digital displays flicker at 2:17 a.m., even when powered off. Amendment 18. If your shadow appears before sunrise, do not move until it merges with your feet. Amendment 19. The phrase "I'm safe" is forbidden. Safer to say nothing. Amendment 20. When in doubt, count. Always count. I keep a fresh log. I inventory every night. I face east, and at 2:10 a.m., I cover the west window. Because the rules work. As long as you believe, as long as you obey, as long as you never ever stop. I don't know if T. Reyes is dead. I don't know if JM is still in the basement. I don't know what it wants. But I know this. It's still watching, and someone has to keep the rules alive. So I do, even now, even here, even when I'm alone, especially then. Because if I stop, who will, and what will happen then? I don't know, but I'm not going to find out.